Welcome to the Peopling Podcast, where we hang out with brilliant human beings who teach us how to be better, well, humans, and decode what makes us tick and click. Inspired by the book Peopling, available on Amazon. Let's get this episode started. Hey friends, welcome to the Peopling Podcast, where we get to get real with some amazing human beings, all about connection, community, and communication. And I am so excited to get to introduce you to today's VIP guest. We've got with us Chris Welton. He is a performance coach, a TEDx and keynote speaker, an international best-selling author of One Jordan. And Chris is known for helping people achieve their goals and overcome challenges. With a focus on accountability and personal growth, Chris inspires individuals and teams to unlock their full potential. He also hosts a popular podcast known as One Hand at a Time, where he shares useful advice and interviews top experts in professional development, leadership, and sales. Chris is recognized as a trusted mentor and industry leader, known for his authentic approach, powerful storytelling, and commitment to helping so many others. And a personal note, I was introduced to Chris Welton 10 years ago. He was my sales and performance coach and single-handedly changed my life.
Yes. I love that. I love that single-handedly part. That's amazing. What a great
Thank
introduction.
you so much for being here with me. It's a huge honor to get to share time with you, but it's an even bigger honor to get to share my friends and people who have had a huge impact in my life with the people who are now in my life in the form of this audience. So I want to just open this up, ask you to just share a little bit about who you are, where you're at, from where you started
Yeah.
and, arrived to where you are today.
Well, first, thank you for having me on. I couldn't say yes fast enough when you asked me. I'm like, yes, let's figure this out. I'm glad that we were able to get it on the calendar as soon as we did, which is amazing. Gosh, there's so many different stories I could start with, but who I am, I think that the first thing that I am is I was the son of a drug addict, right? So I was born with a limb difference. I'm a survivor of infant loss. And I'm a guy that looks at challenges as opportunities. I would say that probably sums up that first piece. But, I grew up the son of a drug addict. So my mom, my mom was a heroin addict and took heroin while she was pregnant with me. That's the reason I was born with my left arm the way it is. And I spent most of my childhood bouncing from house to house. We figured it out the other day. I lived with 7 different families, went to 11 different schools from the time I graduated high school to the time that from when I started to when I graduated. But I look back on that now and it was really a blessing that I was able to live in so many different environments and meet so many different people, because there was a lot of people who really loved me and showed me what I needed to be prepared for what was going to happen next. Now, I went back. My mom got full custody of me again when I was 11 years old. So majority of those bouncing arounds happened prior to the 11 years of age, right? So I was all over the place. But I learned at a young age about money and the lack thereof, and how to hide it from a drug addict, right? You had to hide the money from her. So I started working when I was 11 years old. I told a story on a podcast earlier today that I worked for a company called Junior Salesman, and I would go door to door and I would sell candy and cookies for $3 a box. And at the time I was making 60 cents a box, and about $125 a week is what I made when I was 11 years old. Now, I did those things because I needed to participate in the rent. I needed to participate in putting food in our refrigerators for my sister, who's 3 years younger than me, and making sure we had some of the necessities and the things we needed in life. But I remember having to hide that money in a shoe or in a mason jar in a closet or whatever, because my mom would do everything in her power to find that money and, use it for other things than food. And I think that as I look back on that now, somebody asked me the other day, excuse me, sorry for the frog in my throat. Is there anything I would change about my childhood? As crazy as this sounds, the answer is no, because I'm really where I think I needed to be at 53 years of age. I'm 53 now, but had I not gone through all those challenges and adversity in life and learning the lessons at a young age, and I don't know where I would have ended up. And I definitely wouldn't have ended up where I am now as far as this trajectory in my life to help be positive and impact other people. And I went through so many different things growing up. Like we could spend a whole hour on that story and how sports saved my life, and coaching at a young age. Coaches looked into me and saved my life and let me participate with one arm. And when I was a kid with a limb difference, it was way different than it is now. Like there's like literally Facebook groups for kids with one arm, right? Like I thought I was the only one. Like I didn't know there was anything different, right? Like till I went to the Shriners Hospital for the first time, and I met some friends who were missing limbs. And I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like there's other people besides myself out there. But sports was that thing that I felt, I guess, recognized. I felt that I could come out and perform at a level and participate. And thankfully, I'm athletic, and I was very good at baseball and football and basketball. And even with one arm, I could compete for a starting position with all the other athletes, right? So understanding the importance of coaching at a young age, and as people would instill things into me, belief, which was one of the most important thing, it would help me overcome the negative talk or the conversations I'd have when I'd get home from my mom, right? The things that she would talk down to me and treat me certain ways and that type of stuff. I had receipts that other people cared more about me, right? So it was proof that what she was saying was kind of BS. It wasn't, it was just who she was. And I know a lot of it had to do with her mental illness. She suffered from bipolar and some other things, and then being an addict. So most of the time she came down on me, and the things she said, stole from me, those types of things. This was someone who was really sick, was in a bad spot. So I have a history of learning from people and understanding that I can peck out a drug addict pretty easily. Like you just do. I don't know, it's a skill set that you should brag about, but I do, like, cause I've had people work for me and I go, oh, they got a pill problem. I can tell there's something going on, right? Like you just know from being around that environment. I went into the sales industry and sold cars for a long time. Then got into the mortgage space, and that's where I met Kristi. And right before I got back into the mortgage space the second time I moved to Florida, I fell in love. Like I found this woman that was way better than like she was so far out of my league. And I was at a point in my life where I would never even asked her out on a date, but I got to this point. I was about 40, almost 40. And I said, you know what? Why not ask out the 12 instead of settling for the sevens your whole life? Like, because you settle for the sevens, a no from them hurts as much as a no from a 12, right? So I'm like, I'm just going to ask this 12 out on a date. And she said yes. And we've been together almost 14 years now, and have been married for, I think we'll be married 9 years this year. Yes.
You better know this.
I do know it. We'll be married 9 years this year. But I share that with you because there were so many people in my life that told me I didn't deserve certain things. And then I just got to the realization that why not go for what I really wanted and step out there and go for it. We are very blessed to be in the life we have. I did spend some time in the mortgage company in Florida and enjoyed that with my best friend since I was 8 years old, Jason. But then in 2020, we lost our son, CJ. He was, born with cardiomyopathy hyperplasia right in the middle of COVID, right June and July of COVID, right in the middle of it. So we lost him, and I had some really things to think about at that point. My relationship with God was not good because I felt that my God would never do this to me. Like I'm a good parent. Like I see people who are bad people leaving their kids in cars when it heats up, like just bad things. Right. But why do they get to have a kid? Right. And then not this situation. So 8 months after that, I was sitting on my back lanai and I was flipping through my journal. And in my journal, I had spent in the last couple months before he was born writing down all the things we were going to do, right? We're going to Yankee Stadium. We're going to do I had this whole list of things. And I had to come to peace with these weren't going to happen. And I'll never forget this. My wife came out and sat with me on the back lanai, and she looked at me and she said, I need to talk to you about CJ. And I know the struggles you're having with God. And I said, okay. She said, you need to know that God needed him more than we needed him here. He had bigger plans for him than anything that we could do. That's when I became okay, not okay with losing my son, but okay, well, that made sense to me. It made sense to me that he was needed somewhere else other than where he was. And we got through COVID. We got through all the craziness of this absolute insanity of the business we were in. And then we got blessed on December 12th of 23 with our little boy, Leo, who was born. And right before that, let me go back a little bit. Right before that, I made a decision to leave the mortgage space. I decided I wasn't going to run a mortgage company anymore. I was going to write a book, become a keynote speaker and a performance coach full time because I was in a spot where I felt 10% of the people that worked for me wanted to be better and 90% just wanted a paycheck. And the truth was, every time you brought your stories to me on how bad your day was, and I would look at you and I go, well, did your son die? Because my son died and I'm here today working. So I don't think what your problem is very big. So I just got to a point where I was just done with those people that were causing the problems. And I went all in. And then Leo was born shortly after, and he's great. I'm living a life of what I call by design now. We live in Indiana. We sold our home in Florida, moved to Indiana. And we live in a beautiful home here. And he's playing, I can hear him right now. He's playing on the other side of the house with our nanny, running through the house. And he's 2 now and having a great time. But I, at 53, having a 2-year-old kid is amazing. Like, it's like, first of all, I can afford it, right? Because I couldn't afford my girls. I have 2 older kids, 33 and 26, couldn't afford them, right? But now I can afford him. But I also am able to make up for all the mistakes I made raising my other 2. So, and here we are. We're working on our second book. Just got done giving a keynote at MortgageCon in Orlando last week, and the week before at the National Association of Mortgage Bankers. Just released our TED Talk. I just got invited to speak at Sales Mastery in Dallas, Texas in the fall. So like things are starting to happen and from all the work we've been doing. And then I got invited to be on Kristi's podcast. So like, that's how I got here. I hope that was
It is
enough for you. Was it
so
good?
so incredible. I love your story. I've actually got a tear in my eye, and I just want to kind of clear that out here. You were raised in Florida. How many different houses? 8 different houses and 11 different
7
schools?
different houses, 11 different schools. Yeah. And those
7?
7 houses and 11, like I was all over the country. So I was born in Huntington Beach, California. I lived in San Francisco. I lived in Michigan. I lived in Kentucky and Florida, multiple times in Florida, Jacksonville area in Florida. And then we ended up back in Florida when I was 11 years old, in the Orlando area. And I stayed there until I graduated high school.
Okay, got it. I knew you did high school here with your best
Yeah,
friend.
I did.
um,
Yeah.
a few things that I want to just highlight that that I just respect the snot out of and just truly adore about you. You didn't allow your difference to slow you down. You actually found ways to propel, and thank God for those coaches and those people who spoke life into your life. And it was you chose to hear those voices louder than you chose to listen to your mom's. And for a lot of people, like I'd worked, volunteered for a lot of years with foster children. And what was most heartbreaking was no matter how dire and terrible, abusive, and full of neglect their world and their life was, they still desired to be with their parent because it was their
Yep.
parents.
Yep.
And you could have chosen her voice over anybody else's because it's your mama, But then you got to cut through that noise and say, I want different than what you're modeling for me. And you found those models. So thank God for those people in your life. And listen, your bride, I'm not going to say her name because you didn't, and so I'll respect the privacy. Your bride is a 12. You are
Oh
absolutely
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
She
She
is just
is.
such a knockout. She's
Yeah. Well, thank you.
beautiful. She's funny. She's so smart, and she loves you. And y'all have beautiful son. I'd love to see him on your social media when you post your little snuggle time on the couch with him or whatever you guys are up to. It's a ton of fun to see. I got to tell you, when I really started leaning into high trust sales, which is really, I think, your where you dominate in your space, I will never forget you created an assignment for me, and you wanted me to show you what my goal was, my written plan. Right? If you don't write it down, it's just a wish. And I handed it, I slid it across the desk at you, and you looked at me and you laughed. You laughed at what I wrote down and you shoved it back at me. And my initial thought was, what a stinking I said some up what a jerk this guy is. He's laughing at my goals. I was like, my sales coach, my mentor, my VP of sales here doesn't believe I can hit it. And so I was thinking you were laughing at my goals. And you leaned over. The first things out of your word was aim higher. Like you were the first person in sales and high trust sales that I felt looked at me and was like, you can do this. And I know that that's who you are to a lot of the people that you coach as a high performance coach. But I had to use that very, very personal story because my first reaction was like, oh my gosh, he doesn't think I can do this. And then I left there going, if he believes that I can do this, I can. And, stomped those goals, right? But you'd mentioned the word belief a few times. And I think this is really like who you are in the world. Your example of uh, getting your bride, asking her out.
Yeah,
Even though the chips were stacked against you, right? There was a better chance of her saying heck no versus like I would love to, and going through. I couldn't imagine a more painful experience in one's life than losing an infant. Um, and you've got this way of being about you, this belief system that overrides what should be normal or what's average or expected or whatever else. Can you infuse into our listeners just a few things that keeps you going that maybe you share with your clients? And I realize this is a freebie, right?
of
'Cause
course, of course.
people pay high dollars to learn from you, but just pour into us a little bit about just how important that belief system is and how to upgrade it.
Yeah, I talk about it a lot at being the same thing as we all know about the transference of wealth, right? Like from generations, like how wealthy families stay wealthy because it just keeps transferring over. And I look at it as the transference of belief, right? Like, how can I transfer belief into other people to make them know that they're worthy and they're more than they think they can be or more than they can accomplish? But for me, I'm just a person that is very driven when it comes to saying I'm going to do something. I do it. Like I think on my tombstone it will say Chris said he was going to do it and he did. That's just the person I am. And now I have great support systems in my life. I've got a couple really good coaches that coach me still today in the business and life world. And I've got a wife that's my number one fan. And so it is easier for me to believe I'm going to get somewhere than most people because they don't have that, something else to help them. But if I say I'm going to go do this, this, and this, I really say that because I believe it. I don't just say it because it's a word and I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to go, when I say I'm going to get to something, I go do it. And then I put myself in difficult, tough, challenging physical situations to prove that I'm more than I think I'm capable of. Because I believe the only thing that I'm not elite at is having two arms. I don't have two arms. So if I can go compete against people with two arms and be competitive, then I can go back to that later and say, well, how can I doubt that I'm going to be a great keynote speaker? How can I have doubt about that if I prove that I went and did this as a physical challenge? Here's a receipt. I like to call them receipts, proof that I actually did something, right? My belief system comes from that. And then, of course, I'm very faith-based. I believe that God puts me in positions where I'm supposed to be, even though they're not comfortable sometimes, and that I'm here on earth to impact people who need to hear my story, right? They need to hear me and hear something different to help change their life or maybe put some belief back into them. So if I don't live up to those personal belief standards, how can I transfer that belief to you?
Yeah, that's a great thought. I think your slogan should be whatever it takes, because that's what I think of when I see you. If I see you on social media, you're at the gym at 5 a.m. or whatever time it is, and you're out there proving to yourself and to others that like excuses and reasons don't belong here. And it's one of the things that really inspires other people when they follow you and see you. Okay, so we've got people that are listening, and hard things have happened. They've had bumps along the road and whatever else, and we sometimes get caught in our stories, right? And sometimes it's easier to moan about something than it is to try to break out of that I don't know, fog and see what's possible. So if somebody were listening right now and they're like, man, if he can do it, I should be able to do it, but I fill in the blank with whatever reason and excuse. How do we start talking and thinking and believing differently to start that momentum of that mental shift?
Yeah, the first thing is we have to think and act differently, right? So I have to think and act differently than I am right now to get to somewhere I need to go. So if I know where that is I want to go, if I'm past that part or who I want to become, I'm not saying go be the next Michael Jordan, but like who I want to become, a better version of Kristi or a better version of Chris, right? Like if that's who I want to become, then I have to think and act differently than I do today to get there. And what does that look like? Well, I teach this thing called the it's called the mindset paradigm or adversity paradigm, where it says a lot of people have what's called a victim mindset, right? Oh, this is happening to me, right? Happening to me, like it's coming at me, and there's nothing I can do about it. Well, if we're looking at things as a victim, we're never going to get anywhere. And we all know that person. We all know that victim. And sometimes you are a victim. It's very true.
Before we dive any deeper into this conversation, I want to take a quick moment to share a tool that has significantly improved my life, and that's called Growth Day. It's like having world-class mentors right in your pocket. There are daily challenges that help grow your confidence, your inspiration, and your drive. Check out the show notes for your link to a free trial, and don't let another moment pass you by without checking out Growth Day.
The strongest foundations, I believe, the people that build the strongest foundations take all the adversity in their life and they turn that into lessons and things to grow from and learn from, right? And one of those things I talk about is the architect mindset. It's where I take all my adversity and I create the building blocks for my future. I literally build a bridge from where I am now to where I want to go with all the adversity, all the things I've overcome. Because you could list everything that you've been through in your life on a piece of paper, and you made it through every one of those. Like I don't believe in overcoming anything. Like I overcame this. No, it's always there. So I talk about going through it. We get through this bad relationship. We get through this turn down the market. We get through this loss of a child. We get through any of these things because it becomes part of you, right? And you can either use that to hold you back from the reasons why you're going to take on the next challenge, or you can use that as proof that you've gotten through something and you're meant for more. And everybody has the same ability to do that. And it doesn't matter what you've been through. I gave a talk recently. I said, look, I'm not a gold medalist in the Olympics of suffering. Okay. That's not who I am. Right. I could share stories with you for hours about coming home from school and see my mom passed out with a syringe in her arm. Right. Like I could tell you all these different reasons why those things happen. And I could use those as excuses on why I'm not where I want to be in life. But I decided not to. I decided to use them as reasons why I'm supposed to be somewhere else and provide a better life for my kids and family and not do those things I saw done. Right. So stop being the victim, figure out ways to turn your adversity into some type of foundation you can learn and push off of. And there's so many opportunities. I don't care what business you're in or what you're trying to accomplish, or if you're trying to have a relationship or whatever it is, use the adversity as a tool to get you there. We can use the adversity, the things that we've struggled with, to find strength from, to push through to somewhere else, right? Like we can stack the adversity up and use it as a foundation. And I think too much it's used to hold us back. I'm not going to ask the girl out. I'm not going to try to get the new account. I'm not going to call and try to get the new job. Like we could sit there all day and have that conversation. Right.
I love that, Chris. What I heard you say was, if you shift your thinking, if you can shift it and upgrade it to elite thinking, that you can break through those barriers that are self-limiting beliefs. And why are we so scared of rejection? You a high performance coach, you've coached sales professionals. Like, it doesn't kill us. Why are we so scared of rejection?
I don't think I think what it comes down to is that everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants approval. And when we're rejected, we look at that as a different way. So like where does rejection fall in at? So I was really bad about sales calls for a long time, cold calling people. And then I realized it's because I used to call girls and try to ask them out when I was in junior high and middle school, and they'd say no. So I became afraid of the phone. Right. And the phone is one of my best strengths right now. My superpower is getting on the phone with people. That's what I do. So but I think people look at rejection as a couple of different ways. One is we want to be loved, right? We want approval. And the other one is that we're so worried about what everybody else will think if we get rejected that we rather not take the chance. Everybody's looking for so much approval of everybody else these days, how many likes I'm going to get and follows and everything else, that they're afraid to ask the question. If I showed you how many times I get rejected via text message and DM to ask to get on stage at speaking events, you'd be blown away. I was on stage at MortgageCon, and Neil, who runs the Ford Academy, was there. And I've been trying to speak at Ford events since 2023. And he was in the audience. I called him out from stage. I said, I have texted Neil 612 times since 2023 and talked about getting on stage. He yelled from the crowd and he said, it's 615 times to be exact. And I said, well, you know what, tonight, brother, it'll be 616 when I get off the stage. Like, so when I decided I didn't care about getting rejected anymore, and that no was just where the conversation began, then I started going for bigger things and asking for more opportunities and putting myself in position to get a bigger stage, to get a bigger client. Like, being scared of rejection and creating that fear in our head and filling that narrative gap on what's going to be said compared to what the reality is, it just destroys dreams. It just does.
It's a silent killer, isn't it? And I bet the people who are being living full out, right? They're in our eyes what we would define as success, but they hire somebody like you as a high performance coach. I bet they have some of the same fears as somebody who is too scared to even get started. I'm sure it's the same rhetoric in our brain, the same stories, along the lines of rejection. Okay, so where would you suggest somebody starts in when it comes to communication and connection? So I want to make this really big change in my life. All right, I'll pick up the phone. I'm not so worried about, maybe they won't text somebody 600 times, but like, what is that fuel that keeps you going? So you're not afraid of rejection, but after a while, it's got to wear you down. But you probably
Of
have to do a
course.
lot of no's to get to a yes, right?
Yeah. Um, so I have this thing that I call my burn, and it's where my purpose and my passion connect. Like, what is my purpose and my passion? Like, what are the two things that really drive me, right? And and I literally write in my journal every morning that my burn is my son CJ and my son Leo. I'm going to make them proud every day. It literally says that for years inside my journal every morning. So when I need a little extra boost, I know that CJ's watching me. It says it on my tattoo. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it says CJ's watching me on my arm, because I know that he sees what I do when the other kids don't get to. It just is my driving force to get on the phone and make a call, right? Or make that text message or go for something else. I think you have to connect to something that's bigger than you. And everybody's, what's your why? What's your why? That's great, but I need my why, my purpose to kind of be in alignment, right? Like, and that becomes, I show up whether I'm winning or not. And I'll go a little bit farther on that if that's okay. When a lot of people will change the way they think, then they'll start winning. They'll go do activities and they'll go after it and they'll do the work. And then they get seduced by success and they stop doing the activities and they stop doing the work that helped them get to where they needed to go, and they fall back to where they were before. So connecting to your burn on a daily basis will keep you balanced in that. It'll keep you from straying from where you need to be. And your burn doesn't have to be your sons. It can be that I need to prove everybody else wrong that told me I was worthless. It can be, my ex threw me out and said I couldn't do this. Watch me. Like, it can be my parents were great or they're not great or whatever. But it's got to be something that you just like, that really ignites the fire inside of you to go do what you're supposed to do, whether you want to or not.
I love that, Chris. That thinking, it breaks generational beliefs. You were talking about transference. I couldn't imagine if you took the other road, right? Well, I'm just a son of a druggie, and I don't really have a family home to call my own. I'm unable to grow my own roots. Like, you broke that lie, and you said this is not going to happen, and you're not transferring that to your next generation. I think that's just absolutely extraordinary. Um, you had said earlier you wouldn't change a thing about all of the adversity that you'd lived through, the pain that you experienced. I can't imagine what that would feel like for a kid during those formational years of creating that belief system. Um, if you wouldn't change a thing, what would you say was your biggest takeaway, your biggest lesson that you can appreciate now as a full-fledged adult?
Showing kids that they have value and showing them that they're loved can change their lives, right? You talk about being part of, dealing with foster kids, right? Like, that's such an honorable thing to do, right? And I've spoken to a bunch of groups of foster kids a few times before I left. My sister-in-law was very big in the foster care community in Seminole County. Now she's up here. Everybody moved up here to Indiana, but so I had some chances to spend some time with them. And you can change a kid's life by volunteering and coaching. you can change a kid's life by just having good conversations with them. Um, and I believe that that's probably the lesson that I learned, that growing up, it's so important to have somebody else in your life that really cares about you. And there's this thing that I say between the ages of 9 and 13, everybody has what's called a foghorn or a lighthouse in their life. And it kind of dictates who they become as a child, as an adult, right? It just has a lot of basis on how you behave and those things. And I can look at it and say that the foghorn was my mom. I didn't want anything to do with her, right? Like that was like I didn't want to be like her. But the lighthouse was my one of my baseball coaches, a guy named Mac Dyer. And Mac was a guy who looked at me and I remember I showed up at first practice and he said, "You're my starting first baseman. Like you're my first baseman. Like I've seen you play. You're my guy." And I'm like, okay. Like I was gonna go in right field and like, nope, you're my first baseman. You're the guy. You're gonna lead this team. Right. So he was my lighthouse. And that's why I coached youth sports for so long. That's why I volunteer now at the high schools here, the high school where the town we live in. I help with the football program here. And that would be the biggest lesson, is that you can really change a kid's life and make their life better by volunteering, spending time with them and being a mentor.
What a legacy. You just dropped Mac's name. I have no idea who Mac is, but you made him sound like this incredible, wise, caring
Yeah.
being, because he was, right? What
Yeah, he
a
was. Yeah.
legacy. Yeah, he left through you just by being a mentor and a coach to you. Okay, so what about the people that are like, okay, I'd love to have a high performance coach. I'm not there yet. I don't have a loving, encouraging family. Like, where could you encourage somebody to reach out, to connect, so they can get
Yeah.
their start at this?
I mean, I'm somebody that reads a lot. So I mean, I read every day, like, and it's important on what information you put in your head to help with that, help get through certain things. They talk about you're the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. I think you're the average of the 5 people you hear the most, right? So because we're in such a different space now with technology, but there's so many good motivational and positive podcasts you can listen to, right? We're on one today. Right. But you can listen to the podcasts. You can, I'm a guy that listens to nothing but stuff on YouTube that is motivational. Like I thrive listening to those things, and it keeps my mind focused. There's good groups on Facebook. They don't have to be these crazy groups, but there's good groups on Facebook that people are motivational and trying to do other things. As a performance coach, I'm blessed to be one of the top rated performance coaches in the country now. Right. So like it's not easy to get to me. You can, but it's not as easy as it was. For people that want to jump in, like we do have a group coaching program that's very low barrier of entry. That's twice a month that we can get people into, but seek that. Like if you're trying to grow a business and trying to be an entrepreneur in sales or anything else, a coach will change your life in that as well. Like you need to have somebody that's going to hold you accountable and push you a little bit further. I have 2 coaches right now. I have a coaching budget. Like literally my wife's like, "How much do we spend a year on coaching?" Like we spend a lot, but but it's a reflection of where I've gotten to and who I've become. So it's been a great return on my investment. Um, but if you're just starting out and you don't have a budget for it, there's a lot of places you can find good stuff. YouTube's got a lot of great stuff for free, right? And then you figure out where you want to go from there.
I love that. Who is your favorite podcast that you love to listen to, and what is your favorite book that you've read so far? Maybe you could
Oh
probably wind up
gosh,
listing a few.
there's tons of books. My podcast changes from time to time. Like, uh, it just really depends on what kind of state I'm in or what kind of mode I'm in. But I listen to Ed Milet probably more than anybody. Um, Ed and I have a lot of similarities as far as our talking or speaking style, and I enjoy the way he tells stories, the way we connect. He's the son of an addict, so I would say Ed's podcast is probably my favorite. I do listen to a guy named Andy Frisella from time to time, but he goes off the rails a little bit from time to time. Um, uh, but I would say those 2 are my favorite. I mean, I've got a lot of them in my that roll through my like iTunes and stuff that are on there, and people that I like to listen to, like Jay Shetty. He's real positive, has a lot of good stuff. John Maxwell, who's become a friend of mine, actually was talking to him earlier today. Anything that John does is like, incredible. And as
Yes.
far as books, the greatest book I've read lately is always is the one I'm reading right now. Like I continue to read better and better books, right? Like, so big trust, and it's about self-doubt. And what I do when I read is I use an acronym called CAT, change, apply, teach. So everything that I read, I figure out how I can change. It can change me. I can apply it or I can teach it. And then those of you watching this on YouTube or whatever, you can see these tabs. So those are all client tabs. So what that means is I tab a color in there on which client I need to share some of this with, right? So I'm a performance coach that's always studying to get better. And how I do that is by reading, and I come across things that I know will help this client, that client, and I tab the books up and we go to work. We get on our calls. I'm like, hey, I got something I need to share with you. I read this last week, and this is what we need to talk about. But so for me, I mean, there's a lot. I've read a lot. I mean, I'm a guy that reads at least a book a month, so it'd be unfair to say the greatest book. I don't even know what the greatest book I ever read is. Yeah, it's always the book I'm reading right now, unless it's really
I love that.
bad.
That's a great answer. It's such a great answer. Well, here's what I'd like to ask. We have inside of the Peopling book, the Be the Change Challenge. And I'd love to ask our guests as our way out, our big exit strategy here, would you please leave us with something that is actionable that our audience can put into action this week to be the change that they want to see in the world? What's the one thing that you'd love to share with our audience to be the change?
Yeah, I think to be the change would be acts of service. It's something I practice every day. So like I do at least one act of service every day. It's built into my daily routine, right? Like I read and I journal all those things, and I do an act of service every day. And it can be a little thing. Like today, I helped out my best friend who was having a tough time with some stuff in his new position he's got. Right. I'll let you take that from there. But like we're going through some things, right? So so I did that, right? And and that was an act of service. Or sometimes it's just texting a friend and saying, "Hey, how are you doing?" And they respond, they're doing fine. Then you ask them again, "No, how you really doing?" Right. So I would say acts of service could be the change. Like if you can commit to doing acts of service every day, you'll be amazed on how the world gives back to you. Like it just really is. And I'm a big believer in you can create your own luck by being good to everybody else.
I love what you just said. I've also been told you can't outgive God. So if you are the hands and feet, the light in the world, and you're just giving it unconditionally, right? And as much as you can, you're going to receive even more back. And you're like, stop, I'm trying to give it all out. And all of a sudden your cup just keeps overflowing because of that action. So I love what you said
Yeah.
there.
So a mentor of mine, David Meltzer, teaches this thing called the circle of gratitude. I'm gonna try to get this right here. So he says that when you give more, you receive more. Therefore, you need to ask for more. Like it's hard. I don't ask for much, right? And I told this actually. I was on stage with John Maxwell when I shared this a couple years ago in Charleston. I said that when I realized I could ask God for help, when I realized that, like I thought you just thanked him for everything. Like when I realized that, I went from being a guy I'm 6'5", a guy who's 6'5" that walks into a room to being a guy who's got a guy even bigger than him that walks in every room. So I became immediately dangerous in a good way, right? But like, so I had to really work on asking. So I give more, right? And I receive more, and then I ask for more. And I'm not necessarily walking around saying, Kristi, can you give me more? But like I ask other people for more. Like, can you volunteer with my team? Can you come talk to these guys? Can you do this? Can you talk to my friend's son who's having a hard time? Like I ask for more. And it's this circle that just keeps getting bigger. And it's like it just picks up light speed. It's the craziest thing ever. And when you are coming from that place of gratitude and giving all the time, I hope you're prepared. Because the stuff you start receiving, you're like, I don't know where I'm going to put it all. Right? Like it just keeps coming at you in a very positive and rewarding way.
If we had everybody put just a little bit into motion, imagine what our whole environment, our world, our society, social media would look like and feel like. That is extraordinary advice. Thank you, Chris. Is there anything else that you can think of that we didn't talk about that you'd like to make sure that you leave with us?
Visioning who you want to become and doing the work is has a lot to do with it. But when we think like I'm a big believer in manifesting things, like I am statements. I have these I am statements that I say every day. And when you think the negative I am statements, you're putting the negative in the world too. Like you're attracting the
Chris and I actually had some technical difficulties at the very end. I wanted to hear his I am statements. but the call got disconnected and we did run out of time. So I want to say thank you for being part of this really awesome episode, this great conversation with Chris Welton. Thank you, Chris, for being part of this with me. And thank you for listening. And we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thanks for tuning in to the Peopling Podcast, and grab your copy of the Peopling book on Amazon, and let's keep this connection movement going. Until next time, be curious, be kind, and keep peopling like you mean it.